In a village where stone houses lined the dusty roads, a boy named Samuel lived in a small hut with his grandmother. They had almost nothing. She mended clothes in exchange for bread. He gathered firewood and took on odd jobs for the neighbors, anything to help them get by. One autumn morning, his grandmother pressed 3 coins into his palm. "Buy flour," she said. "I'll make bread. Winter's coming and we're going to need it." Her hands were cold and her cough had got worse. 3 coins. That was all they had for the week. Neither of them knew it yet, but those 3 coins would have to last them the entire winter. Samuel walked to the market, turning the coins over in his hand again and again. Along the way, he passed an old stone bridge where a stranger sat slumped against the railing, tired, hungry, his clothes worn thin, his eyes empty, as if he were simply waiting to die. The man wasn't begging. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just waiting. Samuel stopped walking. 3 coins, a week's worth of flour, his grandmother's cough, the bread they needed to survive. All of it rushed through his mind at once. But something else stirred in him too, a quiet voice he couldn't ignore. He walked over to the stranger and pressed 1 coin into the man's hand. "For food," he whispered. The stranger closed his fingers around the coin. "I won't forget this," he said. Samuel walked away, his hands trembling. At the market, he bought what little flour 2 coins could buy. The sack was lighter than it should have been, and his grandmother noticed the moment he walked through the door. "What happened?" she asked quietly. He couldn't lie to her. "I gave 1 coin to a stranger. He was starving." She wasn't angry, just tired. "Your heart is good, Samuel, but kindness doesn't fill an empty stomach." The flour ran out faster than they'd hoped. They ate smaller portions at every meal, and then winter arrived, harsh, biting, and unforgiving. Snow buried their front door. Wind howled through the cracks in the walls. His grandmother's cough turned into something worse, and soon she was too weak to work. What little savings they had went toward medicine that didn't seem to help. Samuel searched for any work he could find, chopping wood, shoveling snow, anything. But the whole village was struggling that winter, and no one had money to spare. Then one night, his grandmother's fever spiked. She lay shivering under every blanket they owned, and Samuel could do nothing but sit beside her, watching, helpless. He hated himself. If only he hadn't given that coin away. He could have bought more bread, more medicine. Instead, he'd handed it to a stranger he'd probably never see again. And now his grandmother was paying the price. The guilt gnawed at him every night. Weeks passed. They survived on what little help their neighbors could offer. Every morning, Samuel woke up and checked to make sure his grandmother was still breathing. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. Samuel opened it to find a well-dressed man standing in the snow. A stranger, or so he thought. "Do you remember me?" the man asked. Samuel squinted, studying his face. And then it hit him. The eyes, the voice. It was the man from the bridge. "I never forgot," the man said. "That coin bought me a meal the night I thought I was going to die. It gave me the strength to keep going. I found work. I rebuilt my life." He reached into his coat and pulled out a heavy purse. "I've been looking for you ever since." Samuel shook his head. "There's no need." But the man pressed the purse into his hands anyway. "You gave when you had nothing. That's rare. Please take this. For your grandmother." Inside was more than enough for medicine, food, and firewood to last the rest of the winter. Samuel's knees nearly buckled. Tears ran down his face as he whispered, "Thank you." That night, his grandmother finally had real medicine, hot soup, and fresh bread. 2 days later, Her fever broke. Sitting beside her as she slept, Samuel felt something settle inside him. It wasn't regret. It wasn't pride. It was understanding. Kindness wasn't foolish. It was a seed. You plant it without knowing if it will ever grow. But sometimes, just sometimes, it comes back exactly when you need it most. Spring arrived. His grandmother recovered fully. Life went on. But Samuel was different now. He kept helping others whenever he could, never expecting anything in return, because he'd learned something no one could have taught him with words alone. Hope is never wasted, even when it costs you everything you have. But there was one thing Samuel never told another soul, a question he carried with him for the rest of his life. He never learned the traveler's name, and he never saw him again after that night. Sometimes, lying awake, he'd wonder, was he even real? How did he know exactly when to come back? Was it chance? Or was the universe simply keeping a debt he could never fully understand? Maybe some kindnesses are repaid in ways we never see coming. And maybe that's exactly the point.
Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.